Hey everyone, Fletcher Ellingson here. Welcome back. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so glad that we're in this conversation together. Bruce Lee once said, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." I'm going to tell you in a minute why I enjoy that quote so much. In my opinion, staying in this personal development conversation is critical, as it is the access point to acquiring the abilities to create the life we truly want. You see, acquiring and accumulating knowledge, that's interesting, but won't make a difference for you. Think about it. How much knowledge do you already have about what you could and should do in your life, but you don't do it? Many of us have a ton of information or knowledge about how to create health and vitality. We know a lot about how to create wealth. We've read books. We've listened to the experts in interviews. But few people, even supposed well-educated people, have ever done this. They work most of their lives and are not wealthy. You see, we have information on how to better our relationships, yet many struggle to create fulfilling relationships. Most people are skilled at acquiring knowledge, but few people focus on acquiring the skills or abilities to create. And this brings us back to the Bruce Lee quote, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." You see, the guy who has practiced 10,000 kicks and has only practiced or only executed them once, he's acquired a lot of head knowledge and even tried them out once each, but he hasn't acquired a skill other than amassing knowledge. On the other hand, the guy who knows only one kick but has taken action and practiced that kick 10,000 times has acquired a skill, and that will serve him and make a difference for him. You see, having a brain full of information may be interesting, but it's not going to make a difference for you. But what will make a difference for you is acquiring the skills of taking action and creating momentum. We talk a lot about the needed ingredients for achievement on this show. Well, another essential ingredient is momentum. And today we're going to ask the following questions. Why is momentum important? Where does momentum come from? And how do we create it? But first, let's define it a bit. One source defines momentum as the strength or force that allows something to continue or to grow stronger or faster as time passes. In the physics worlds, it is the property or tendency of a moving object to continue moving. And in personal development, I define momentum as the creative driving force, which results from belief-fueled persistent actions. I'll say that again. It's the driving force which results from belief-fueled persistent actions. You see, when you focus on the positive results you get, you focus on the wins you experience as a result of being in action, then you're creating momentum. And momentum carries you into more action, more persistence, more wins, more fulfillment. Momentum in our life becomes a force of its own, which is the continuation of action, the continuation of progress. And this is personal development. Momentum is like a feedback that provides energy and initiative. And momentum is different than persistence, but they're both needed for creating a fulfilling life. Persistence usually creates momentum, and momentum then usually in turn creates more persistence. Let me illustrate this. A number of years ago, I began training for my first triathlon. It was going to be an Olympic distance, which means it was about a mile swim, 26-mile bike ride, and then a 6-mile run. Let me just say that I had never ever had participating in a triathlon on my bucket list. I didn't know much about it. It really held very little interest for me, but I had a number of friends who were either participating in them or they were active bikers or swimmers, runners, or all three. And now you've heard me say before that the fastest way to raise your own standards is to get around people who have higher standards than you do. And you'll usually rise or fall to the level of standards which your peers hold. In the area of health and fitness, many of my friends had very high standards, certainly higher than my own. Now, as a result, I was frequently invited to exercise or train with them. And usually I turned them down because my core belief was that I couldn't perform any of those activities to the level needed to actually go out with them. And furthermore, wouldn't it be painful? And swimming? Come on. I mean, I could jump off a dock and swim and play around in the water, but actually swimming a set distance of any length? No way, forget it. I didn't have the form, the technique, the ability. I would have drowned. However, at some point, because they kept asking me to join them, I became curious about the events. I definitely admired them and their abilities. At one point, my wife, who had never been interested in a triathlon, became interested. She began exercising and completed an event and then went on to complete a marathon. I found this to be incredible. What was happening? Well, what was happening was she found some compelling whys and began taking action. Then she began tapping into momentum. Her core beliefs began to change about herself from someone who didn't exercise, someone who couldn't exercise, to being someone who did exercise and someone who could. Her persistence created momentum. And the winning experience of proving to herself that she could do something like complete a triathlon felt so rewarding that she wanted to keep that rewarding feeling alive and was inspired to take on a marathon, right? She was experiencing momentum. Now, similarly, that's what happened to me. As I began accepting my friends' invitations to ride or train with them, my core beliefs began to also change. I found that I was able to run. In fact, I remember when I had run 1.4 miles. I felt like that was a huge achievement. 1.4 miles. I'd measured it with the car afterward. And then I bumped it up to 2 miles. Felt great. Then 3. And then pretty soon 5. You see, each win gave me momentum and the desire to persist. I wasn't about to quit now. So I desired to keep going, and I began riding. And again, started with 5 miles, then 10, then 15 and 20. And at last I took on swimming. I needed to be able to swim a mile comfortably because the Olympic distance was 9/10 of a mile. And when I started out, I literally had to stop after like 2 laps. I was out of breath because my swimming was so inefficient and I was so stressed out. But with coaching and willpower and persistence, I kept at it. And as I continued to increase my laps, I began experiencing momentum. I began looking for opportunities to swim more. I looked forward to it. I loved actually how I felt afterwards. I was enjoying becoming fit. And finally, the day came for the race. And I had such an enjoyable race. Afterwards, I still had plenty of energy after the race, and I felt great. I felt alive. And this is how momentum looks. Keeping momentum going involves asking what is next. And it's not getting to the end of accomplishment and then stopping or resting on your laurels. It's about starting another game or taking it to that next level. You see, momentum spurs you on. You have energy, you have experience, you experience drive. In the game of sales, for instance, some salespeople make a sale and then slow down and they take some time off. And there's nothing wrong with this. It's one way to play the game. But if you take too much time off, then you get thrust back into the fear of having to make another sale. See, then there are some salespeople who get excited about making a sale and let the momentum of that good feeling propel them into action to make another sale. Creating momentum makes it easier to stay in action, and staying in action creates momentum. Even if we experience roadblocks where we have to slow down, it's easier to start up again because we have momentum. I'll give you an example of that. Lately, I had some issues with my right shoulder and my right knee. In fact, my knee so much that I haven't been able to really run much at all. And my shoulder so much that swimming became challenging. But because my core belief is that I am a person who exercises and I exercise regularly, and doing so regularly creates momentum, so that when I experience a setback, such as an injury, I'm not completely stopped. Just slow down a bit. So I have to modify what I do. I have to change it up a little bit. I have to look at other things I can do that are consistent with my core belief that allow me to continue. See, again, that core belief is I'm a person that exercises, so momentum drives me to stay in action. I might be slowed down, but I'm not stopped. I might have to modify the stroke when I'm swimming, or instead of running, I have to just walk briskly, and that's great exercise too. See, momentum prevents me from getting stopped. I may get slowed down, but I don't get stopped. I may experience roadblocks, but momentum helps me to stay in action and go over the roadblock, or under it, or around it, or sometimes right through it. When we lose momentum, we find ourselves vulnerable to self-doubt and resistance. And resistance is always waiting for that lull, which it sees as its opportunity to promptly hunker down and remind you of all the reasons you should stop. So create momentum in your life. Acquire the skills in taking action and creating momentum. If you only focused on developing 2 skills in your life, these 2 would give you access to creating the life of your dreams. So, a question for you. How far can momentum take you? For me, it took me from never having participated in a triathlon to completing my first try, going on to complete another, then deciding to participate in a half Ironman, which was 1.2 mile swim, 52 mile bike ride, and finally a 13 mile run. I remember completing that event. I felt proud, and I also felt like that was enough. Those distances were significant and way more than I had ever thought I could do. But my friends' momentum was greater than mine. They were ready for the full Ironman. And remember what I said, hanging out with people with high standards, you're either going to rise to those standards, and in most cases you are, right? So, and I'm glad I decided to. I decided to sign up for the Ironman Coeur d'Alene. And that was in Idaho. And the training for Ironman taught me so much about persistence and momentum. And I completed the Ironman in 2011. It was one of the most memorable experiences of my life. Momentum. You create it by getting into action, by noticing what's working, by focusing on and celebrating the wins, by persisting, and then momentum sends you right back into action. All right, we've got to wrap this up. Now, it's time to get out there, get into action, and start creating momentum. Be a source of kindness, be a source of contribution. You have worth, you matter, and I believe in you.